And then the last 4 pages, I think the transition will be pretty clear, but I'll point you to it. I am going to sit down. This is called Kathy Casa. From beneath the bridge, you could spy the corner of the mill, curving in and up, almost like an old bow. It looked crooked, but Mary Felger claimed it wasn't. So the bottom was made thicker, 8 feet thicker in fact, than the top, to resist the flooding that had taken one of the previous mills out. The damage had been so complete, she claimed, that it even dragged one of the old grindstones 100 yards down the river, where it still laid the day. Mary knew all sorts of things about the mill, whereas Ashley knew nothing, had hardly remembered that it was even there. Ashley had lived in Youngstown all 16 years of her life, and was well aware of the park's presence, and that it was supposedly the best thing about the city, but she had never really bothered to visit it, or think much about it. Now the chirping of crickets, the hushed hum of the falls not far off, and the dark twisted limbs of the trees enclosing her, caused her stomach to toss the way it did when she first rode a roller coaster. There was nothing, in Ashley's opinion, very natural about the natural world, and Mary Felger would not shut up. Ashley wished she had ridden with Michael instead of Mary. She wished she hadn't been so jealous of the fact that Beth, who lived closer and would be riding with them, would obviously take the front seat and leave her to ride alone and back. She wished she had come with anyone other than Mary, so she wasn't even sure she'd be here. She didn't laugh much, or in the right tone, and she never wore makeup, and she hardly ever gossiped, but somehow never shut up. She just had huge tits, and Michael talked to her all the time. Why? Ashley would never know. She had spent what seemed like forever, but was more like 10 minutes, stuffed under the bridge with Mary, examining the antique iron spiked fence that ran the length of the cliff. It was just tall enough to reach her elbows, and not tall enough, in her opinion, to be safe. Every time a car rumbled overhead, she jumped, and laid her hand out to steady herself, and it poked her. She hated that fence, and she hated Mary, even if Mary pretended not to notice Ashley's fear. "You hear that?" Ashley finally snapped, as Mary went on about some fact about some stone in the mill. There were twigs snapping in the distance, a light flickering between the thick weave of trees. "It's Michael," Mary replied, offhand, unconcerned. "Most likely, anyway." And she was right, because she was always right. And soon Michael was in view, carrying 2 six-packs and leading Pete and Dan, and Beth, who stayed close to his right arm and had eyes as big and bright and high as beams on an as high beams on an SUV. The group amassed under the bridge, and Michael set the beers down and shook his hands out and grinned out around at everyone. "Are you ready?" Now this is sometime after when all the teens have split up and have begun making out, as teens do, and stuff goes awry. Michael stood up and brushed himself off and looked down at Beth as she writhed across Ashley's lap. "Look, I don't know what those 2 fucktards are up to, but you've got to calm down. We're going back to the mill." "Aren't you listening? Dan is dead." "That was a piece of fucking Dan." Beth shrieked and buried her face into Ashley's chest and sobbed. She blew her nose, and Ashley tried to shift herself back, but she could already feel the damp and stick of the dribbling fluids. "They're totally fucking with you. They ruined the whole night." Michael grumbled and cupped his hands around his mouth. "Dan! Pete! Get the fuck out here!" He moved a little ways off and shouted again, and Ashley raised herself, and Beth to their feet. "They couldn't have faked it," Beth whispered frantically. "Look, they couldn't have. You have to get me out of here, okay? Like I have to go now." "We're going," Ashley whispered in bitter lip. She rolled her eyes up towards the dark expanse of trees above and sighed. "Just quiet down, okay? It bit his fucking ear off, okay? It was the thing Mike had talked about. I swear, it had these huge teeth and these twisted antlers and, oh God, the smell." It did smell bad. The sewage stench had permeated somehow up and away from the river. Beth's nostrils flared out and she shot Ashley a wide-eyed look, like a rabbit in a fox's jaw. And suddenly she was bolting. "Beth!" Ashley called, lunged after and missed. Beth pushed her way past Michael down the path. "God damn it," Michael spat. "We'd better go after her." He started jogging down the hill, and Ashley, suddenly feeling cold and tired, and certain she was going to puke if she stayed to stink any longer, followed to the best of her ability. "Beth, wait up," Michael called, and the sound of Beth's feet on the wooden bridge echoed up the hill, before stopping abruptly. The bridge came into view, and Ashley caught a glimpse of Beth's white, crisp top crisscrossed by the railing, and heard the strange drag and thud of something heavy against the wooden bridge.